You wake up and your body feels tight. Your back aches. Your hips don't move the way they used to. You tell yourself you'll start something, anything, to feel better. But you don't. Because starting feels impossible. Not because you're lazy, but because you don't know where to begin. And more than that, you don't trust yourself to finish. This video will show you why a 25-day Pilates challenge is not just about your body. It's about proving to yourself that you can follow through, that you can commit to something small and actually see it through to the end. And by the time we're done, you'll understand why 25 days is the exact amount of time you need to rewire your relationship with discipline. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people who start a challenge like this quit within the first week. Not because Pilates is hard, but because they underestimate how much resistance their own mind will create. They think the enemy is the exercise, but the real enemy is the voice that whispers, "You can skip today. You're tired. You deserve a break." And that voice is so convincing, so familiar, that most people listen. They don't realize that the challenge isn't physical. It's psychological. And if you don't prepare for that, you've already lost. Let's start with why Pilates. Not yoga, not running, not lifting weights. Pilates, because Pilates is slow, it's controlled. It doesn't let you hide behind momentum or adrenaline. Every movement requires focus. Every position demands precision. You can't rush through it. You can't fake it. And that's exactly why it works. Because it forces you to be present. It forces you to feel your body, not just move it. And in a world where everything is fast, loud, and distracted, that kind of presence is rare. It's also deeply uncomfortable. Because when you slow down, you notice things. You notice how weak your core actually is. You notice how unstable your balance has become. You notice how much tension you carry in places you didn't even know existed. And that awareness, that raw, unfiltered awareness, is where the real work begins. The 25-day structure is not random. It's deliberate. 25 days is long enough to build a habit, but short enough to feel achievable. It's not a lifelong commitment. It's not a year-long transformation. It's just 25 days. And that simplicity is powerful. Because when you tell yourself you only have to do this for 25 days, your brain stops resisting. It stops catastrophizing. It stops imagining all the ways you'll fail in the distant future. Instead, it focuses on today, and tomorrow, and the day after that. One day at a time. One session at a time. One breath at a time. That's how discipline is built. Not through grand promises, but through small, repeated actions that stack on top of each other until they become who you are. But let's be honest. The first few days will feel easy. You'll feel motivated, excited even. You'll do your Pilates session and feel proud of yourself. You'll think, "This is it. I've got this." And then, around day 4 or 5, something shifts. The novelty wears off. The excitement fades. And suddenly, the session feels like a chore. Your body is sore. Your schedule is tight. And that voice comes back. The one that says, "Maybe I'll do it later. Maybe I'll do 2 sessions tomorrow to make up for it." But you know what happens next. Later never comes. Tomorrow never happens. And the challenge ends before it even really began. This is the moment where most people quit. And it's also the moment where the real transformation happens. If you push through. Because here's what no one tells you about discipline. It's not about feeling motivated. Motivation is a spark. It ignites quickly, but it burns out just as fast. Discipline is different. Discipline is the decision to act regardless of how you feel. It's the ability to keep moving even when your mind is screaming at you to stop. And Pilates teaches you this in the most visceral way possible. Because every time you hold a plank, every time you engage your core, every time you breathe through discomfort, you're training your brain to stay calm under pressure. You're teaching yourself that you can do hard things. that you can feel resistance and still move forward, that you can be uncomfortable and still be okay. By day 10, something interesting happens. Your body starts to change. Not dramatically, not in a way that others will notice, but you notice. You notice that your posture is better, that your movements feel smoother, that your breath is deeper, and more importantly, your mind starts to change. You start to trust yourself. You start to believe that when you say you'll do something, you actually will. And that shift, that quiet, internal shift, is more valuable than any physical result. Because once you prove to yourself that you can commit to something small, you start to wonder what else you're capable of. And that's when everything changes. The middle stretch, days 11 through 18, is where the real work happens. This is where the challenge stops being about the exercises and starts being about identity. You're no longer someone trying Pilates. You're someone who does Pilates. And that distinction matters, because identity drives behavior. When you see yourself as disciplined, you act disciplined. When you see yourself as someone who follows through, you follow through. And Pilates, with its slow, methodical nature, gives you the space to build that identity. One controlled movement at a time. But there's a trap here. Around day 15, you'll feel confident. Maybe even a little cocky. You'll think you've got it figured out. And that's when complacency sneaks in. You'll start cutting corners, skipping the warm-up, rushing through the movements, checking your phone between exercises. And before you know it, the quality of your practice drops. This is the test, the real test, because maintaining discipline when things are hard is one thing. But maintaining discipline when things feel easy, when you think you don't need to try as hard, that's where most people fail. The challenge here is to stay committed to the process, even when the process feels repetitive, even when it feels boring, even when no one is watching. By day 20, you're close, so close, and that's dangerous, because your brain starts to relax, starts to think, I've basically done it. I can ease up now. But the last 5 days are the most important, not because they're harder, but because they teach you how to finish, how to see something through to the very end, how to resist the temptation to quit when the finish line is in sight. And that lesson, that ability to finish what you start, is a skill that will serve you in every area of your life. In your work, in your relationships, in every goal you set from this moment forward. And then, day 25 arrives. You do your final session. And it's not triumphant. It's not some grand epiphany. It's quiet, simple, just you, your mat, and your breath. And in that simplicity, there's something profound, because you realize that this was never about Pilates. It was about you, about proving to yourself that you're capable, that you're disciplined, that you can commit to something and see it through. And now, as you finish, you're not the same person who started. You're stronger, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally. You've rewired the way you see yourself. And that's a transformation no one can take away from you. If this video gave you clarity or made you think, tap the like button. And if you want more content like this, calm, thoughtful, and focused on real growth, subscribe to Audiobook Studio. We create videos that help you build the discipline you've always wanted. Thank you for listening. And remember, discipline isn't built in a single moment. It's built in 25 small, deliberate decisions. Starting today,